You think God is found inside a label, but labels are only containers. That human beings built the wine was before the glass. God doesn't belong to any religion. God belongs to love. Religion is a language. Love is the meaning. Religion is a boat. Love is the ocean. Religion is a doorway. Love is the house. Ibn Arabi said, "My heart has become capable of every form. It is a temple for idols and a Kaaba for the pilgrim I follow. The religion of love. Whoever loves camels turn. That is my religion and faith." These words are not poetic exaggeration. This is metaphysical accuracy, because forms are many, but reality is one. God is not owned by any group, by any sect, by any tribe, by any theology. God belongs to everyone, because God belongs to no label. Religion is only the code that tries to translate the infinite into sentences. But the infinite itself is not a sentence, it is existence. Religion is the map. Love is the destination. Religion is the theory. Love is the experience. This is why hatred in the name of God is the biggest denial of God, because the moment you hate in God's name, you have already stepped outside His fragrance. Love does not shrink God. Love expands you into God's horizon. God is not a brand to be defended. God is a presence to be recognized. When a heart is filled with love, it becomes more accurate than any philosophy, more precise than any theology, because love sees truth directly, not through inherited prejudice. Ibn Arabi taught that every form of devotion is simply a mirror reflecting that single light, and therefore he refused to imprison God inside his own preference. Labels divide humans, but love erases the border and returns the soul to the original unity where God was. Not ours or theirs, but simply God, and you cannot divide the indivisible. Religion is only the alphabet. Love is the sentence. God is the meaning beyond every sentence. When love enters you, you stop defending God, because you start embodying God. The more you love, the closer you are to truth. The more you label, the further you are from truth. God doesn't belong to any religion. God belongs to love. A.O. said, "Religion is a language. Love is the meaning that language tries to describe, and this is the beginning of all misunderstanding, because human beings fall in love with the dictionary and forget the thing the dictionary points toward, so they polish words and neglect essence. They defend syllables and ignore fragrance. They memorize holy sentences and never taste the state those sentences are supposed to awaken in them. Language is a necessary limitation, because the infinite has to compress itself to become speakable, and when it compresses, it becomes symbols, and symbols are frozen shapes of living truths, and people take the frozen shape as the living truth, and this inversion becomes the tragedy of every age. So one group adopts its alphabet as sacred and another group adopts its grammar as sacred, while all the time the meaning behind both is the same, and meaning is not interested in your alphabet. Meaning wants to move your heart, not your tongue. Ibn Arabi's law is very simple. Love is the interpreter of every revelation. Love is the translator behind every sacred verse. Love is the oxygen of prophecy, and if love is removed, the alphabet becomes sharp, the grammar becomes a knife, the sentence becomes a sword, and the name of God is used to destroy the image of God in other beings. The moment love is lost, religion becomes politics. The moment love is lost, religion becomes identity war. The moment love is lost, religion becomes self-worship disguised as God worship, because ego hides most comfortably in sacred vocabulary and hides most powerfully behind holy costumes. So the human starts believing he is defending God, but in reality, he is only defending his inherited syntax of God, and syntax is not God's. Syntax is just the finger pointing toward the moon, not the moon itself. Ibn Arabi saw the moon, not the finger. This is why his heart could contain every sanctuary, because he was not confused by external letters. He was reading the one behind the letters. When you say God in Arabic, or God in Hebrew, or God in Sanskrit, or God in English, you think you are saying different things, but you are saying the same direction with different sound waves, and sound waves are not reality. They are just carriers of reference. The reference is one, the carriers are many, and love, the lens that allows you to shift from carrier to reference. Language cannot unite hearts. Language can only coordinate communication. Love unites hearts, because love sees essence without needing translation. Where words cannot reach, love reaches in a single flash. And in that moment, religion fulfills its purpose, because the purpose of religion is not to freeze you in dogma. The purpose of religion is to take you by the hand until you reach the place where dogma is no longer necessary. When you taste honey, you no longer need a speech describing honey. When you taste the ocean, you no longer need maps describing the ocean. Religion is a map. Love is the taste. Religion is the sign. Love is the destination. Religion is the vocabulary of sacredness. Love is the sacredness itself. So, when people fight to protect their linguistic shape of theology, what they are actually doing is replacing reality with representation, and representation is always cheap compared to reality. Representation is always two-dimensional compared to the thousand-dimensional pulse of existence. This is why mystics do not argue. Mystics taste. Mystics do not debate. Mystics witness. Mystics do not say my alphabet is holier. Mystics say this truth has no alphabet. This truth is known by burning, not by recitation. This truth is recognized by dissolving, not by memorizing. Because love is not grammar, love is not sentence structure, love is a living flame that reorganizes the soul, and you cannot argue flame. You can only be set on fire by it. And when love catches you, you instantly see that religion was always a doorway, not a prison, and the doorway opens only inward, not outward. And once you step in, you realize the house was always love, and God was the landlord of love, not the landlord of vocabulary. God is not found in labels. God is found in the heart that has dissolved labels, because a heart full of labels is not a heart. It is a filing cabinet full of categories, and categories are not God. Categories are only the bureaucracy of identity, and identity then the cheapest form of spirituality. Identity needs enemies to exist. Love does not. Labels create tribes. Love creates universes. Labels defend boundaries. Love dissolves boundaries. This is why you can meet someone who memorizes scripture, but one that has no softness in his eyes, and you can meet someone who has never read a single verse, yet there is a fragrance of God in his breath, because God does not enter through the brain. God enters through emptiness, and the brain is usually full. The heart is the only organ that can become empty enough to receive truth. Ibn Arabi said the heart is the throne of the real, and a throne is not a container full of junk. A throne must be cleared of everything before the king sits on it. So if you fill the heart with religion label, then sect label, then scholar label, then denomination label, then tribe label, then national label, how will God sit in a heart that has no capacity left to host him? This is why you see people argue in the name of God, but you do not see light in them. This is why you see people hate in the name of God, but you do not see gentleness in them. This is why you see people kill in the name of God, and you do not see humility in them, because labels are cheap copies of God. Labels are God costumes, not God's presence. Labels are only linguistic idols, and the human mind loves idols, because idols are controllable. God is not labels. Let you feel superior. God does not labels. Let you build group identity. God does not labels. Let you fake piety. God does not. So the real work is to dissolve the labels inside the heart, not to polish them, not to defend them, not to weaponize them, not to tattoo them into your identity. And dissolving labels does not mean rejecting revelation. Dissolving labels means seeing through revelation into the meaning that revelation wanted to awaken inside you. Though you obey revelation, but you do not shrink revelation into tribal language. You do not say God is mine. You do not say God speaks only my tongue. You do not say God belongs to my interpretation, because the moment you say God is only here and not there, you are secretly claiming you own the location of the absolute, and this is the greatest delusion of ego. The ego cannot possess God, but the ego would love to pretend it does, because then ego becomes holy, and once ego convinces itself it is holy, then anything it does becomes righteous, even if it is cruelty, even if it is pride, even if it is arrogance, even if it is violence. This is the psychology of religious corruption. Labels become sacred, and the heart becomes dead. Truth becomes tribal, and the divine becomes political. So God is no longer the light of existence. He becomes a mascot of the group. When the mystic dissolves labels, he does not become faithless, he becomes real, because then he can finally meet God without the filter of identity. He can meet God like a naked soul, with no nation, no sect, no color, no badge, no flag, because the soul does not have these. The body has these, the society, has these, the ego, has these, the soul, has only longing, pure longing, longing to return, longing to merge, longing to dissolve, longing to vanish into the one, and longing is love, and love is longing, and longing cannot be labeled, because longing is infinite, so God becomes visible, not when you add more labels, but when you remove them, when you erase them, when you melt them. A heart that is empty of everything becomes full of God. A heart that is full of opinions becomes empty of God, and in the end, the only hearts that can reflect the divine are the ones that have become as clear as glass, the ones that have removed everything that is not God, the ones that have dissolved every boundary, because God cannot be contained, so only boundarylessness reflects Him. Truth is not owned by identity groups, truth is owned by love alone, because truth does not require a membership card, and truth does not check your badge, and truth does not ask which building you pray in or which label you put on your chest. Truth does not bow to your affiliation. Truth bows to the one who is empty enough to hold it, and emptiness is not created by flags or uniforms. Emptiness is created by surrender, and surrender is not the property of any ideology. Surrender is the property of love, because only love can collapse the ego until nothing remains except the light of the one. Ibn Arabi never claimed truth for a team. He never said this group owns God and that group is blind. He said truth belongs to whoever sees truth, not whoever shouts about truth, because shouting does not reveal God. Shouting often reveals ego, and ego always tries to own what cannot be owned. Ego wants to turn God into territory and truth into citizenship so that it feels special and protected and important. A God is not an immigration border. God is the entire universe. Truth is not inside your group. Truth is the ground that allows every group to exist. Groups are masks. Truth is face. Groups are accents. Truth is meaning. Groups are noise. Truth is silence, and silence where God speaks, because words are often manipulated by agenda, while silence is too pure for manipulation. Silence is where the soul hears itself, and the soul where the real speaks unfiltered. Humans invent groups because groups give comfort and psychological safety and the illusion of superiority, and superiority acts like cocaine for the ego. It numbs insecurity. For a little while, the ego clings to tribe and says this is the correct truth and everyone else is wrong, and that statement alone is proof that truth is not present, because truth does not create psychological superiority. Truth creates humility. Truth does not make you feel above others. Truth makes you see the divine spark in others. Truth does not shrink God into one culture. Truth shows God shining in every horizon. Ibn Arabi saw the one burning behind every form, and because he saw that, he could not hate any form. He could not limit God to one syntax or one ritual or one moral accent. He saw the ocean behind every cup, and the cups were different, but the water was the same, and the moment you taste the water, you no longer fight over cups. Only those who never tasted fight over shapes. Those who taste stop arguing and start dissolving, because love eats the ego, and once ego is eaten, ownership disappears. Ownership is a fiction created by the insecure mind longing for control. Love does not control. Love evaporates control. Love does not possess. Love unveils, and truth can only be unveiled, not possessed. So any group that claims exclusive access to God is essentially claiming that infinity fits into their container, that cosmos fits into their doctrine, that the one fits into their vocabulary. This is intellectual idolatry. This is worshiping the container instead of the contained. Truth is not owned. Truth is recognized. Truth is not a trophy. Truth is a revelation. Truth is not a possession. Truth is a state, and states belong to love, because only love opens the layers of perception. Only love burns the walls. Only love allows you to see without distortion, and when you see without distortion, labels fall. Silence expands. Humility becomes natural, and suddenly there is no us versus them anymore, because there is no them. There is only God wearing billions of shapes, and every shape is temporary, and the light behind shape is eternal, and truth is that light, and love is how you see it. Truth belongs to love, because love is the only state where ego is not speaking. Love is the only state where the heart is not contaminated. Love is the only state where the soul is clear enough to reflect the infinite. without twisting it into tribal advantage. Truth is not a property, it is a presence, and that presence belongs only to the ones who have become empty enough for love to fill them, and in that filling truth recognizes itself through them. When you love, you don't defend God anymore, you manifest God's fragrance, because the need to defend only comes from insecurity, and insecurity only comes when you have not tasted the reality directly. When a person is far from the source, he becomes a lawyer of symbols. When a person is near the source, he becomes a vessel of presence. Ibn Arabi's path is this: the closer you come to the center of the real, the less interest you have in arguments, and refutations, and debates, and victories. The more you love, the more you melt, and melting does not attack, melting radiates. When you see a beautiful flower, you do not argue about it, you do not debate about it, you simply witness it and feel it and soften in front of it, because beauty does not need to be defended. Beauty speaks for itself. Love is that same principle, that at the level of the infinite. So, when love enters the heart, it does not push people away, it pulls them inward. When love is real, you stop talking about the God you believe in and you start becoming a mirror of the God you are returning to. Love is not a doctrine, love is not an argument, love is not a belief, love is a state where the ego dissolves enough to allow the infinite to shine through without interference of personal agenda. And when the infinite shines through a person, that person does not need to enforce God on anyone, because God becomes visible, without force visible, without pressure visible, without threat visible, without push. The ones who argue about God loudly, the ones who haven't met Him inside their heart, so they try to compensate intellectually what they failed to taste spiritually, and the more distance there is between the soul and the source, the more words are needed to cover the emptiness inside. But when you love, you do not fill emptiness with noise, you allow emptiness to become the throne of the divine, because the heart is only worthy when it is empty from everything except Him, and when He sits inside you. It is impossible to hate anyone, because to hate someone you must forget God inside them, and forgetting that is forgetting God inside yourself. So, you cannot hate someone if you are conscious that the one is breathing inside them. The only way to hate is to replace presence with identity, and identity with division, and division with superiority, and superiority with ego. Every argument about whose God is right is a testimony of ego, not of God. If God is real inside you, you do not need to protect Him, because the finite cannot protect the infinite. Protection implies fragility, and God is not fragile. God is not needing defense, God is needing recognition. Defense is a sign of fear, love is a sign of certainty. The moment love enters, certainty enters, and the moment certainty enters, aggression dies, because aggression is only born where insecurity is alive. So mystics never defend God, mystics reflect God, mystics never attack people, mystics illuminate people, mystics never try to imprison God in one shape. Mystics show how God is shining through all shapes, because when God becomes real inside the heart becomes like a lamp, and a lamp does not fight darkness. A lamp only needs to glow, and darkness dissolves on its own. There is no argument between light and dark. Light wins by being light, love wins by being love. God becomes visible through embodiment, not through debate. So, when you love, you are not proving God, you are revealing God. When you love, you are not persuading, you are demonstrating. When you love, you are not preaching, you are transmitting. When you love, you are not pushing, you are radiating. When you love, you stop becoming the security guard of heaven and start becoming the fragrance of heaven on earth. And fragrance is the most powerful evidence, because fragrance enters without force, fragrance convinces without text, fragrance transforms without threat. The more you love, the closer you are to truth. The more you love, the more God uses you as His mirror, and mirrors do not argue, they reflect. Mirrors do not force, they reveal, and God becomes visible not through fists, not through pride, not through debate, not through labels. God becomes visible when a soul becomes so soft that the infinite can pass through it without distortion, and that softness is love.